As this supposed pandemic has played out over time, it certainly appears as though that once again, we, the American people, have been lied to. Turns out, it's not as deadly as they wanted us to believe. Even the main medical mouthpiece for the current government dog and pony show published a paper in the New England Journal of Medicine in 2020 saying COVID-19 has the same exact death rate as the common flu, 0.1%. Well-known doctors from around the world have been posting videos saying in no uncertain terms that what we are being told is not factually based. That's a nice way of saying it's a lie. National Guardsmen are being called up to active duty to assist with the crisis, to help the overburdened hospitals that are by and large empty, by the way. There's so much of this mess that smells to high heaven, it's not even funny. Imagine for a moment that you and a buddy are sitting around one day and you discuss the best way to rob a local bank. That conversation is what is known as a conspiracy to commit a felony. But when government organizations sit around and discuss the best way to remove basic liberties from free citizens, that is considered policy. Does something seem a little odd about that to you? Sure does to me. I'm going to be including some videos from other creators in this video conversation to assist in getting the message out that what is going on is a total scam. The WHO, the B&M Gates Foundation, and others have totally conspired to defraud the American people of their freedom, and ultimately it will be left up to the local law enforcement officers to suppress the rights of everyday law-abiding citizens. They have a choice to make in this regard, and how they choose to react to the orders that they are given could have an immense impact on their local community. Please be sure to watch this video to its end to get all the lowdown on what's really going on.
If you work in law enforcement, I have a very important question for you, one which soon may be a matter of life or death. I'm sure some people become police officers just so they can boss other people around, but I'm going to assume here that you mean well, that you want to be one of the good guys, in which case, my question is this. Is there anything the politicians could enact into law that you wouldn't enforce? Is there any order that you would refuse to carry out, or will you do absolutely anything your bosses tell you to? In the U.S., police have already obeyed orders to fine or arrest people for a wide variety of harmless activities, such as dancing at the Jefferson Memorial or having a vegetable garden in their front yard. Police have even gone so far as to execute violent paramilitary raids on food co-ops and organic farms. For decades, police have been carrying out armed home invasions, forced property confiscations, and other acts of violence against people who weren't hurting anyone, but who engaged in behaviors or habits which lawmakers have arbitrarily declared to be illegal. You may be comfortable in assuming that you'll never receive an order to do something truly immoral, but the fact is, with every order you receive, you have a choice between obeying without question or relying on your conscience. No doubt there were cops a few years ago who never expected to be ordered to disarm innocent people, to do door-to-door home searches without warrant or probable cause, or to detain and interrogate people for merely driving down a road. Yet police have since been ordered to do all of these things, and almost without exception they obeyed. So it's not unreasonable to ask, is there any point at which you will draw a line and say, no, that I will not do? And if you won't draw such a line anywhere, if you will do absolutely anything your political masters tell you to, how are you any different from the enforcers of Soviet Russia, Red China, or Nazi Germany? You may be tempted to say, I don't make the law, I just enforce it. Or to argue that if some legislature, court, or some authority above you says it's okay, then it must be. But keep in mind that this is exactly what the thugs of every tyrannical regime in history said to justify their actions. And how do we remember those people now? As courageous, noble law enforcers? No. Unless you want posterity remembering you as a heartless, mindless pawn of oppression, then you'd better decide, and decide now, where you will draw that line.
Now, police officers, soldiers, federal agents, law enforcement of all categories, including sheriffs, etc., might say that today we find ourselves in different circumstances. But after doing a little research, or a month's worth of research, and talking to every medical doctor and looking at the headlines and the guidelines coming out of the CDC, it appears America's been set up. Not just America, but the entire world, by a small group of people. Now, I know, that sounds ridiculous. It sounds conspiratorial. Then why is this form right here from the cdc.gov, even though the Center for Disease Control is a privately owned, for-profit company and has nothing to do with the United States government? Even though their form right here that goes out to all doctors and nurses all across the country is telling them no matter how people die, if it's from leukemia, if it's from cancer, if it's from a heart attack, also include COVID-19 so we can boost our numbers. Now you're probably going, this is ridiculous. This is a conspiracy YouTube channel at any rate. But listen to this and check this out and understand this, because these are all facts and they'll be pinned in the comment section below. This article is from 2013, July 14th. This is FR Insider Access. This was widely known. You probably might not have known it because it wasn't in the mainstream media, but it still happened nonetheless. The United States government repealed the Smith-Mundt Act, which forbid the government from using propaganda on their own citizens. They repealed it and began spreading government-made news to Americans. That's how we ended up in Iraq for 13 years. That's how people you probably served with are no longer here because they committed suicide. 22 soldiers per day since Iraq started have committed suicide. You don't hear about that from the actor known as Donald Trump, do you? But it still happened nonetheless. They repealed this law so the government can freely use propaganda on the American people. Why would they ever do that? And surely they've never done that, correct? Well, that's where you're wrong. Let me show you a news article that just ran on every single news outlet recently.
This video, obtained by ABC News, appears to show the fury of the Turkish attack on the border town of Tel Abyad.
A border town bombarded by Turkey's military. This video right here appearing to show Turkey's military bombing Kurd civilians in a Syrian border town.
Now, this came out in October of 2019, and as you can hear the people, all the World News Tonight, ABC News, etc., they're talking about Turkey is bombing our ally Syria. Well, the problem with all that is this was a Kentucky gun show, as you'll hear.
Kurds who fought alongside the U.S. against ISIS. Now, horrific reports of atrocities committed by Turkish-backed fighters on those very allies.
Exactly. The mainstream news reported to absolutely everyone that Turkey was attacking our ally Syria, when in fact it was simply footage from a gun show in Kentucky, United States. And the thing about this is, even if it was just a small lie, they made it into a much larger lie by saying reports of atrocities were already coming in. Well, the thing is it's impossible for reports to atrocities to be coming in when this entire thing was complete and total utter bullshit, okay? So that explains why they repealed the Smith-Mundt Act. The government's been using propaganda against us and against everyone for a long, long time, all leading up to this point we find ourselves in right now. This is the beginning of a one world government, a one world religion, and a one world military. You've heard him say it. Global, global, global. You've seen all these different paperworks come in over your offices. Sheriff's Department, federal agents, military, local law enforcement, etc., etc., etc. If you turned off your television, there is no pandemic. There is no pandemic. I've been across the country 3 different times over the last 9 weeks. There is no pandemic. COVID-19 is a simple flu. And they've simply made it into the new ISIS, Al-Qaeda, Osama bin Laden, Red China, Russia, etc., etc., nuclear Armageddon. This is the newest one, and it's working perfectly, but the wheels are starting to come off, and that's where you're going to come into play. This man right here, Dr. Anthony Fauci, has been the one that Donald Trump, everyone's been leaning on. He's been explaining absolutely everything to us, right? He's the one telling people they can't go near each other, they can't do anything, blah, blah, blah. Yet every time you see these people giving a press conference, they're never social distancing, which is the stupidest thing I've ever heard in my life, and they're never wearing a mask. But what's more is Dr. Anthony Fauci right here, this fellow, also wrote this article in the New England Journal of Medicine you may or may not have heard about. This isn't mainstream. This isn't a conspiracy website. This is the New England Journal of Medicine. This article was written in 2020 by Dr. Anthony S. Fauci, MD. There's his credentials right there. It's a short article, but it gets right to the point. If you could look right here on this 4th paragraph, this suggests the overall clinical consequences of COVID-19 may ultimately be more akin to those of a severe seasonal influenza, which has a case fatality rate of approximately 0.1%, or a pandemic flu, rather than a disease similar to SARS, MERS, which have a fatality rate of 9 to 10%. Do you see what I'm saying? I'm going to leave links to all this because this is going to play a part in history and perhaps your immortal soul for real. This guy wrote this article. To his peers, he's telling them the truth. This is just simply a flu, no big deal. The fatality rate is 0.1%. But when he gets on the television, when he's standing next to the actor known as Donald Trump, he says the exact opposite. You're going to have to decide which one is true. But I'll tell you what, use your senses. Nobody's dying. Hospitals aren't full. And every day, more and more world experts in their fields are coming out saying this is totally ridiculous. This makes no sense. Dr. Gupta, whatever it is, who cares? Oxford-based research team, same. None of this makes any sense. German virologist, Dr. Karen Moling, same thing. None of this makes any sense. And it's not just 10 experts. It's not just Dr. Fauci himself. It's 12 more experts. It just keeps coming and coming. I'm a dude on YouTube, and I've managed to get several MDs to come on and say, this is totally ridiculous. None of this makes any sense whatsoever. Numerous MDs have come out and said that you cannot even get a virus through an airborne fashion, meaning social distancing is absolutely laughable. It makes zero sense. Wearing a mask is absolutely laughable and makes zero sense. And yet we've already seen law enforcement beating people and dragging them off public transportation because they weren't wearing a mask. All the while, the people administering the law weren't wearing masks either.